The one thing I was watching some of your videos and you had, mentioned about the loose cannons out there
Yeah.
that just do whatever they wanted, and it's a problem. Like, we have one newer sales rep that we thought was very promising, that he was great at canvassing and bringing in the initial signups, but then he would get there and give away gutters and waive a deductible and give marketing credits for some, and then it was like, and then he's wondering why he's only making $130 on it when he should have been making 2,500, and it's like,
Right.
I explained to him, like, there's a recipe that we have to all do the same thing. You can't just run out and do whatever you want.
Right.
And well, why would I do that? What I'm doing now is working. Okay, well, if you want to make what you're making, then you keep doing what you're doing, but everybody else is going to pass you up. And we're having also trouble with some of the sales reps, like, not following up enough, like, to collect that back end check. I don't understand why they're not on it. Like, get like,
Don't you
is
want to
this
get paid?
right? Is this a common thing though, that, like, that back end check? I mean, I don't get it. I don't know why they wouldn't be calling every day or other day to,
Right.
get the money.
So it's funny that you bring that up. And sorry if I'm lagging. On my screen, my voice is like carrying behind my mouth moving. So is that happening on your end?
A little bit, but it just reminds me of like a kung fu, movie.
Yep, like an Asian. Yeah, just pretend that I'm like
Yeah,
a
Bruce
karate
Lee.
master.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh
So,
huh.
oh, so back on track here. It's like distracting me because I see my mouth moving, but like no words, and then the words will follow. I'm like, why? Why is this happening? I keep trying to shut things, but anyhow, okay. So when I first got started in this business, the guy that like recruited us, and it was his company. That was one of the things he talked about. He's like, collections, like, be on top of it. I don't know why it's such a problem, but these guys, like, that's the most exciting part of the job. Like, that's when you get paid. So don't slack on collections. So I always thought that was bizarre too, because I'm like, why wouldn't I go and collect my money stat? Like,
Right.
that's as soon as the job is done, I want to get that. So this all comes down again to how these guys are trained to follow systems and procedure. So when you're dealing with guys who have done things their own way for a while, it's going to be a little bit harder to teach the old dog new tricks, right? Like, they're just, I don't know why, they're just resistant to doing things a new way once they've been like hardwired to do it one way for so long, even if it's inefficient or it doesn't work.
Right.
So the key here is moving forward. When you have brand new people who haven't been around the block in this business before and they're learning how to do this job, we are literally teaching them to treat this like a job. So instead of, you're 1099 cowboy, go and do whatever you want to do, it's your world, it's, this is your job. Yes, you're getting paid 1099, but here's what we expect of you. You do this, then you do this, then you do this. They understand that the what's and when's are their job, and they liken that to a regular 9 to 5. If your boss tells you to go file 60 pages of tax returns by noon, they go and they file 60 pages of tax returns by noon because it's their job,
Right.
right? They're afraid they'd get fired if they didn't. We
Right.
have to position these components of the job every step of the way the same way. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's ingrained in them from the very beginning, like, this is my job. So, more specifically with collections now. The next thing with collections is we have to help them understand why. And I know you're thinking, isn't getting paid enough of a why? You'd think so. I don't know. But if it's not and it's not working that way, then we need to help them understand a couple more things. One, it gets more and more challenging the longer you wait to collect money because the homeowner starts to get weird. Something happens in between that gap where suddenly they like feel like the check is theirs. It's like slowly growing onto them, and you have to like pry it off of their chest. It's ridiculous. So we want to let these guys know, like, you guys, some weird phenomenon happens when you are slow on collections because Mrs. Jones starts looking at that check sitting there on her, desk and thinking, this guy might have forgotten about it. Maybe I will go and buy that new king size bed I was thinking about. Like, they
Right.
start making plans. It's ridiculous, but that's what they do, and it gets harder and harder. Or it opens up the gap, like, This check's still sitting here. Now they start nitpicking. That piece of flashing looks like it's a centimeter off.
That is,
I'm going to hold on to that check.
That is a huge issue too.
Yep.
I mean, couple on the top of my head too, and it's because we didn't get that final payment. We have to get better about doing completion walk around and having them, I think, sign off once the project's done that they're happy with everything.
Yes.
So that then when they get the check and they say, well, what about this, this, and this, you can, well, you signed this you were happy when this all happened, and now you got a check and you're not happy. So,
right.
We need to get the guys to be better about that too.
Right. Yep. And then, the other thing too is teaching these guys to set the expectation, because what they're probably doing at this point is they don't talk about the collections because in their mind, psychologically, they feel like that's going to be an uncomfortable part, which is ludicrous because think of anything else. We want to teach these sales guys that collections is just like when you go get a haircut. You go and you get your hair cut and then you pay for it immediately after. It is normal. It's not weird. It's not uncomfortable. The hairdresser isn't like,
so maybe.
It's going to be, I hate to charge you. It's like,
right.
All right, that's going to be $50 or $300 if you're a girl.
Coming out of their bank account. It's coming from
exactly.
their insurance company. And that's what I keep, they paid their premiums. Yes, they paid for it essentially, but they're not seeing it, the way
it's not hurting them.
Yeah. It's still.
They're not feeling it.
Right.
Exactly. So setting the expectation means this every step of the way. Like when I'm closing, I let people know exactly what's going to happen when, and I remind them multiple times. So for example, here are a few examples of a timeline, like when I'm closing a customer and walking them through how collections is going to go, construction, the whole bit. I'd say, okay, Mrs. Jones, like when we're going over the initial agreement before the roof is even bought, like paid upon completion. So what this means is, we're going to be doing the roof. It'll probably take 1 day max looking at the size of your roof and the pitch. So if we start on a Thursday and we get done Thursday evening, I'll either pop by that evening or the next morning, and we'll get together, do a last overview outside, make sure everything's looking good and up to your standards. I'll be able to bring you your final invoice at that time, and we'll collect the final payment at that time as well. And they're like, okay. So now they're expecting it. And then I do it again when we pick out colors and everything. I'm like, okay, Mrs. Jones, so we got everything picked out here as far as colors, your shingles, your siding, whatever. We're looking at a delivery date of Tuesday, so we'll probably be starting on Wednesday if we can. Should only take about a day, so I'll pop by Wednesday evening and I remind them again. We'll do a final walk around just to make sure that everything looks good and you're happy with it, and I'll bring you your final invoice for your records, and then we'll do the final collections at that time. And then the day the roof starts, hey, Mrs. Jones, we're going to be over about 7 a.m. tomorrow, We're going to be getting the roof done and started. I'll be by tonight. Would 6 or 7 work better for you for me to pop by and do a final overview and make sure everything looks good for you? By the way, I'll bring you your final invoice at that time, and we'll square up with the final check as well. So now we're reminding them the whole time. So it isn't weird. It's just expected. So you set the expectation, and then it's just the next step. It's very natural. But when these sales guys aren't talking about it, they get weird about it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is so bizarre. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I know. But that's how we have to teach it. So we teach them to set those expectations. We teach them to make it a part of their sales presentation or a part of what they go through when they're, letting the homeowner know that their construction is going to start on a certain day. That's what we do. And then we give them an analogy to help them understand mentally that it isn't weird, like the haircut analogy.
Sorry, my phone.
Put that shit on vibrate, Raina.
I know. I'm sorry. I thought I did. Jesus. Brett just got back too. He'll be joining us in just a minute here.
Cool.